Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I'm Cypher.
And I'm Fox. Before we get started, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. Today is a very important episode, and I can't understate that. The reason for this is because tonight we will be reading and discussing the op-ed that was discreetly submitted to the Globe and Mail. This was written by a national security official and public servant who was responsible for leaking at least one of the CSIS reports to the media.
Not only did they take a significant risk in leaking the document, but took another risk to actually explain what happened. Credit to Fox for finding this, and after reading the first few paragraphs, we both decided to stop and read the rest as an episode.
We have to continue to let these patriots know that there are those of us that support them and will do what we can to influence our public officials.
With all that said, let's get into the message this brave soul left for us to find. When I joined the public service many years ago, I swore an oath, not to party or to person, but to my country, to its democratic institutions, and to my fellow Canadians. When I first became aware of the significance of the threat posed by outside interference to our democratic institutions, I worked, as have many unnamed and tireless colleagues, to equip our leaders with the knowledge and the tools needed to take action against it. Months passed, and then years. The threat grew in urgency. Serious action remained unforthcoming. I endeavored, alone and with others, to raise concerns about this threat directly to those in a position to hold our top officials to account. Regrettably, those individuals were unable to do so. In the time that passed, another federal election had come and gone. The threat of interference had grown, and it had become increasingly clear that no serious action was being considered. Worse still, evidence of senior public officials ignoring interference was beginning to mount. So this makes me sad, but also comforted in a way, in that our take on what was going on was completely accurate. So there's work being done by CSIS agents and officials, and by the sounds of it, they were pleading and screaming to the Prime Minister's office that something is going on, and they were refusing to do anything. It's sad that it came to this. Continuing on. Despite these concerns, the decision to discuss this threat with Canadian journalists was not an easy one. In this line of work, the question of whether or not to blow the whistle rarely arrives unaccompanied by other ones. I asked myself, can I do this while mitigating the risk to our country's sources and methods? Will this mean the end of my career? Who will take care of my family if I go to prison? That's a scary thought.
Yeah, that's extremely daunting.
Like, imagine you're in this position and you feel like you're the only one that can do anything. You're the only one that can raise this.
But not even that you've gone through the proper channels already, and they would be the people to do something about it, and they're not. And you're left holding the bag. You're left having to save the country, essentially.
Well, and you're faced with the choice of releasing information that, if discovered, could send you to prison with no foreknowledge as to whether or not you would be successful or not. That's called patriotism right there. And, you hear the word bravery just thrown around in the media, for people that, choose to, identify as the opposite gender, or eat too much, or, wear, underwear in a photo shoot. And it's really a crime that it's being tossed around like that. This is bravery right here. And, it's a shame, in a way, that we don't get to know this person's identity, because they deserve a medal for this.
Well, furthermore, could you imagine if they were a family like us with one income earner, and that person works for CSIS and is having to decide, do I put my family first or do I put my country first?
And it sounds like they are in this type of situation because they're asking who will take care of my family if I go to prison. So, what a terrifying thought.
Could you do it, Cypher?
Don't know, and I don't want to know. I guess I'm kind of doing it right now, but there's certain safeguards in place that, so maybe if I'm this person and if I'm ensuring that I'm putting those safeguards in place, yeah, maybe I would. Maybe I would. Anyway, let's continue. For me, the answer to these questions was found in weighing them against the public interest. I hold no personal complaint against our political leaders, against our national security community, or against the Liberal Party. Indeed, I have voted for the latter in past elections and hope to be able to do so again one day. Neither was my decision taken out of any special animus toward the government of the People's Republic of China, despite its driving involvement in these affairs. Instead, I hope that by providing the public with information I believe to be in the interest of all Canadians, we as a country would begin a much deeper conversation about what it is that we expect of our government. I hoped that we could launch a conversation about how to improve transparency, how to enhance accountability, how to protect all members of our society against external threats, and ultimately, about how we continue to pursue a system of governance that best serves all of its citizens. Wouldn't that be a dream, to have a transparent and accountable government that actually works to protect everybody in Canada against external threats and internal threats, and allowed us to speak our opinions freely without having to put stupid puppets in our faces? While I still believe that conversation to be necessary, it has unfortunately become marked by ugliness and division. So let me be clear. As troubling... I'm sorry, I heard Justin Trudeau's voice in my head.
Let me start by being very, very clear.
So let me be clear. As troubling as the revelations we have seen are, I do not believe that foreign interference dictated the present composition of our federal government. Nor do I believe that any of our elected leaders is a traitor to our country. Nonetheless, the growing impact of foreign interference on our ability to enjoy a free and fair political process is undeniable. Will these revelations give some Canadians cause to question the integrity of our democratic institutions and processes? Yes, they well might. But preserving the alternative, that Canadians remain unaware of the risks to those institutions, would be to deprive them of the ability to participate in our democratic processes with meaningful agency. Moreover, it would be to brush aside the experiences of many Canadian members of diaspora communities who have long been unable to express their political voices freely and unfettered by the threat of foreign intervention or reprisal. Indeed, I urge you to listen to those courageous Canadians who are willing and able to share their experiences in this regard. This is a very senior person. I can tell you now, this is a very senior person in the National Security Agency. Just with the quality of the writing and the types of words that they're using, this is someone who's been around for a long time. With that said, we must all recognize that this is not a partisan issue, nor is this a China issue. Your fellow progressive Canadians, your fellow conservative Canadians, and your fellow Chinese Canadians are all just that, Canadians. In having this conversation, we must resist the reflex to reduce the challenge that faces us to one of us versus them. We must recognize that protecting our civic values should not, need not, and cannot come at the cost of abandoning our commitment to diversity and multiculturalism. We must come together as a national community and ask ourselves how we can do better, this time, the next time, and all the times that follow. And I don't think that there's a lot of people out there that are reacting to Chinese Canadians regarding this. It's not their fault.
Well, I don't think there's even people, from what I've heard and seen anyways, that are being negative towards Chinese citizens. I think most people understand that this is a result of their government. It has nothing to do with the citizens.
Well, I think most people recognize that given the type of government that they have over there, their citizens are just as, I'd say, powerless to govern their lives sometimes. When their government says, hey, all of you are farmers today, you don't really have a choice, and you have to do what they say.
Well, I mean, during COVID, when they were trying to have, zero COVID or whatever it was, they were literally locking people in their apartments. Like they were sealing the doors shut. People could not get out.
Yeah, and like the whole country must have felt like an internment camp.
I don't think anybody is being hateful towards the citizens.
No. And I'll say this in a certain way. I don't think anyone is hostile to liberals. I think people are just hostile and fed up with how Justin Trudeau is handling this.
Okay, my family votes Liberal. They're never going to change.
No, but...
Right, but I don't hate them. I still love them, and they're still good people. I'm just not a fan of their political persuasions.
No, but when I say liberals, I mean even the government. So when I say hostile to liberals, I think people are just completely frustrated with how Trudeau is not answering any questions, on how he's been deflecting the whole time, in how he's, like, again, he's blown an opportunity. He blew an opportunity to go down as one of the greatest prime ministers in the history of Canada by the way he didn't manage COVID at all. And, he did have a chance to redeem himself by bringing this forward to Parliament and saying, hey, listen, we've put in a bunch of measures to try and combat foreign interference. It's still going on. Let's come together as a government and decide what the best way to move forward on this is. That's leadership. And if he did that, there's nothing anyone could fault him on with that, at least not reasonably. I always tell people that report to me, be first. And what I mean by that is, if you're the first person to tell the story, it is much more difficult to discredit you, because you're the one that is actually providing the first version of the truth. As people, we tend to hear something first and then regard that as true. And then if we hear something contrary to that, it is much more difficult for us to accept that second opinion. So be first. He could have been first when coming to Parliament and saying, this is what we have going on, let's have an open inquiry, let's get to the bottom of it. The problem is that he didn't do that, and all of the deflecting and the way he's been managing it, it tells everybody that he has something to hide, whether he has or not. And if he hasn't, he's really screwed himself, because he has made it seem to everybody, including the intelligence sector of the government, that he does have something to hide. So he's really painted himself into a corner. And it's going to get to the point where the Liberals may kick him out. And
I hope so.
Well, and people are already talking about this on some of the media agencies. They've had, I think, Mulcair on, who was the previous NDP leader, and his opinion was that it may be, the end may be coming for Justin Trudeau as head of the Liberals. So continuing on. On the question of what happens next for me, I have little to say but this. If and when the time comes, I will take my lumps for my part in this. I will do so without resentment or regret, knowing that while what I have done may be unlawful, I cannot say that it was wrong. I say this because I was raised to believe that integrity is the act of weighing your actions against your principles, not against what is convenient or expedient. And here my principles remain firmly tied to those words in my oath. I will serve my country, I will serve the democratic institutions on which it was founded, and I will most certainly serve my fellow Canadians. This is powerful stuff.
This is heavy. Like, this is, I'm going to say a man, but a man or woman, probably a man. This is someone's, like, they're putting their life on paper almost. Like, they're putting their life at risk to bring this information to Canadians.
Well, it's making me almost tear up, reading this, because they're just exposing, their motivations and essentially their character to the world. And ironically, nobody knows who they are.
And this person is caught between a rock and a hard place. They tried to do the right thing by telling senior officials what was going on, and they were just brushed aside. And they knew what was going on was wrong. So they brought it to the media, and they brought it to the citizens.
So to finish it up, I am not the first in our public service to have grappled with such an unenviable ethical dilemma in recent years. Not so long ago, our former Justice Minister, Jody Wilson-Raybould, faced one that was even more acute, given what she stood to lose. And let's remind everybody, she did lose it, because Justin didn't support her. He removed her. I worry, however, that we may be running short on individuals willing and able to risk the consequences of standing by their principles. So to my fellow Canadians, if you can, please work together to ensure that we are among the last public servants that will ever feel compelled to take that risk.
And we do that by holding our government to account. Cypher and I wrote an email to all of the Liberal MPs because they're the ones supporting this special rapporteur.
I think one of the problems in Canada is that the vast majority of Canadians, and this is also a good thing, might I add, the vast majority of Canadians aren't caught up in politics. They just want to work and live their lives and live in peace. But it's getting hard to do that in Canada, and I think Canadians are seeing that. But they need to start paying attention as to what is going on in this government. They can't allow themselves to just sail into the next election and vote for who they've always voted for. They need to really examine which parties are trying to hold people accountable. The parties that are trying to hold people accountable and hold themselves to account. That's who you need in power. Because that demonstrates that they understand that they are public servants. They serve the public. That is their job. And the more Canadians that start to understand that they control that, and you're not just one vote, you're one Canadian that is in a community of Canadians. And if you start discussing these things with other Canadians, at some point there's going to be a meeting of the minds, and in my opinion, the right party will be elected into power so we can get to the bottom of this stuff and start putting this country back together so that we can finally be proud of living here again.